All right, let's do this thing. Week 14 recap. Regular season is done. It's finished. And we move into the postseason now. Start with the week 14 headline. And you know what? To me, it's the fact that the six best teams made the playoffs. That's always the goal for me as the commissioner of the league. I want the best teams in. Now, as someone who plays in the league, I don't necessarily want that. And things didn't turn out exactly how I selfishly would have wanted them to. But as far as getting the best teams in, that happened this year. Um, you look at it, six of the top seven teams in scoring made the playoffs. The top six in records, if everyone played everyone every week, made the playoffs. The top six in second matchup record made the playoffs. So it worked out nicely. And if you want to even go a step further, the top two in record, if everyone played everyone every week, and the top two in second matchup record were the two teams that got a bye. The same; those were also the top two teams in scoring. So the two most deserving teams got the byes, and the six most deserving teams made the playoffs. And that's a successful season. What happens now, we'll see. You know, uh, in a week by week format in the playoffs, fluky things happen. It is what it is. That's just part of it. And it's part of why people enjoy playing this game because of the randomness. But to me, you want to get the best teams in after 14 weeks of play, and that happened. And I thought the first year of the second matchup was a great success. I've said it many times on here. It's not perfect. There were some moments that were not the best. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, but over 14 weeks, it proved to be a pretty good system. And I was very happy with the way things played out as far as all of that goes. So, top six teams made it. Top two teams got the byes. That's pretty damn good. And it took until the last week for that to all sort itself out. All right, I want to take a second now and just go over that thing that I sent out to everybody, the positional scoring breakdown. What a tedious process it is doing this, but I love getting this hashtag data to be able to analyze it and just kind of look at what made the great teams great and what cost some of the worst teams their season. So I'm just going to go position by position and mention some things that stick out to me. First off, at quarterback, that Allen and Hurts advantage is obvious, right? Sam and Lohan, each of them basically 2.5 points higher than anybody else. So there's a clear tier there of those top two guys. And then Krieger is third, and that's because of the back half of the season where Dak Prescott has also been in that elite group. So if you had one of those three guys, you made out pretty damn well. And outside of that, it's kind of just a bunch of, bunched up um, teams. You look at fourth through 10th, separated by basically 2 points per game. And that's the way it felt to me. If you didn't have Allen, Hurts, or second half of season Dak Prescott, that was everyone else was pretty much the same at the quarterback position. And of course, rounding things out, you have Andrew, and yeah, the position was terrible for him this year. Just flat out terrible. Burrow was not good early on when he was injured, playing injured, and then Burrow ends up missing time, of course, over the last month. And so it was a real nightmare for him. And that Burrow pick in the third round, between some ineffectiveness and injury, you could certainly argue that that was the worst pick of the draft because Andrew was, certainly hoping to be in probably the top four of quarterback scoring, and instead he ends up in dead last. And that's just so devastating for your season. Go over to running back now. How about Krieger with a 2.4 point edge per game over anybody else? And that just There are a few reasons for that, right? One, Christian McCaffrey is just that incredible. He's that much better than everybody else. His consistency and his ceiling is unmatched. And then the depth of the position and Pacheco and Rashad White, whoever he had in at the running back two spot on a given week, you knew you were going to get production over the last really 2 months. Both of them have been great nearly every week. Not a ton else that sticks out to me here. Maybe Sam, who he essentially does not start a running back that he drafted before what, the 13th round, wherever he got Kyron Williams. And Sam is third in running back points per game, but that's because of how good Williams was and because of the Josh Jacobs trade. And then just kind of timely performances from other guys. Javonte Williams, when Kyron Williams, I get the two Williamses mixed up there. When Kyron missed some time, Javonte Williams had a few big performances. Chuba Hubbard had a couple of well-timed performances. So to me, it's interesting that Sam, who obviously started his draft off with two receivers and a quarterback, Jefferson, Waddle, and Josh Allen, that he was able to get himself up third in points per game at the position. Not too much else here of note to me. Maybe Mecca, the fact that he comes in last despite he made an emphasis on the position. Derrick Henry was an early second round pick. Aaron Jones was an early fourth round pick. And the two of them just kind of disappointed. Derrick Henry was okay. He wasn't a bust, but he also wasn't great. And Aaron Jones was a colossal disaster, of course. And that's a big reason why Mecca really struggled at the position. And it largely cost him his season in the end, just not having a running back two at hardly any point this season. Move over to receiver. How about Nordiff? We talked about so many times on here how goddamn amazing Tyreek Hill, Keenan Allen were. It shows 22.86 points per game from a receiver. That's nearly 48. Well, not 48, losing my mind. It's about 45 per week between the two spots. Huge, huge edge. And those two guys, they've been unstoppable. They are a little banged up right now, and we'll see. Man, Nordiff getting that bye is pretty crucial. With Keenan Allen missing this week, who knows what goes on from this point onward as well. Tyreek Hill injured his ankle on Monday night as well. And then I'm second. And yeah, I mean, we knew you start receiver, it better work out. And it did for me. And it also, in the end, did for Colin, who came in third. I went Diggs, A.J. Brown. Colin went CeeDee Lamb and Garrett Wilson. And those tandems worked out for us. And they needed to. When you spend your first two picks on receivers, they got to work out. Sam ending up in eighth, right? That kind of shows you. It's incredible that he kept his season alive. You take Jefferson first overall. You take Waddle 24th or 25th, wherever he took him. Jefferson misses 2/3 of the season. Waddle largely disappointing for where he was drafted. And yet it didn't matter. Sam kept his team afloat and worked his way into the playoffs. Again, there's nothing too crazy here to me, and it just kind of shows the quality of the league. It's not like you don't look at it and there's not some insane outlier at the bottom, like, oh my god, wow, one team had 4 points per game less at a position than anybody else. Wow, that's awful. No, you don't really see that at hardly any spot across this chart. It's pretty bunched up and makes sense. There were no, Andrew's team was pretty rough, but no one was really a pushover. You knew that in any given week somebody could put up at least 115, 120 points. There was not some weekly garbage can. Tight end, Peter leads the way, and that's to be expected. You spend that first round pick on Travis Kelce, you better lead in tight end scoring. But the problem here, the Kelsey advantage was not present in years past. Last year, Travis Kelsey, who Colin had, gave him a 7 point per game advantage over the second ranked tight end team. 7 points per game from first to second. That's what an advantage Kelsey was last year. This year, it's not even a point per game between Kelsey and TJ Hawkinson, who Lohan in second place had. And I mean, hey, you could keep trickling on down. It's really bunched up, and it felt that way to me this year. It felt like tight end was kind of deeper and more evenly dispersed than I can remember in a very long time. There were plenty of good options out there. Dylan gets Evan Ingram late in the draft. Sam picks up Sam Laporta. And even towards the middle of the pack, Horvath, he was in seventh. He gets over 10 points per game from just a completely like piecemealed together tight end group. David Njoku and Logan Thomas were kind of his 1 and 2. And I'm in eighth when I had no tight end for the first half of the season, but then I was able to find Kincaid, find McBride, and now I'm in decent shape there. So really, essentially everybody got at least respectable production from the position. Nordiff is the one person who didn't, in last place at 7.18 per game. It was a real problem for him, and it was one of the things that held his team back. You look at the way Nordiff's season went: fifth in quarterback scoring, fourth in running back, first by a good margin in wide receiver. But that dead last in tight end. And then you look at 10th in defense, 11th in kicker. Some of these flukier spots didn't really work out for Nordiff, and he still had a great season. But yeah, Goddard was an issue all year. Got off to a very slow start. Then he got injured. And I'll tell you, what I take away from looking at this is if Nordiff can get some production from Dallas Goedert in the playoffs, if he can get some production from defense and kicker, I think he wins the league. I really do. And we'll see what happens. Flex, pretty wild that Mecca, 18.2. That's an insane number from your flex. Now, I mean, we know why. Every week he was starting either Puka Nacua or Mike Evans there. So you were starting a wide receiver one at flex every week. And that enabled this massive production. Dylan was in second. It's the same thing. He was starting a high-end wide receiver too. DJ Moore, Brandon Ayuk, the Devontae Smith, those are the types of guys in your flex spot. Of course, you're going to have great production. I find myself as being one of the most disappointing here, down in seventh. And that's just because DK Metcalf really hasn't had. He had that one massive game a couple weeks ago, but that's it. It's been very low ceiling for Metcalf. And I also had a 0 point performance mixed in when I had to start Keontae Ingram once. So that drags your numbers down. And that's actually a good thing to mention too here. Like, things could be really inflated by one massive or one horrible performance or a couple of them. So this isn't like the greatest piece of statistical analysis ever, but it's an average. It's 14 weeks. It's a decent sample size. It tells you something at least. But yeah, I'm in seventh when I was hoping that I had a low end wide receiver one in that flex spot all year, and that's simply not what Metcalf was. We'll combine defense and kicker here. Some pretty crazy defense numbers compared to last year, at least, like quite a bit higher across the board. And I guess that's good to see. I don't know why that is. There must have been more touchdowns from DST this season. That's my only guess. Krieger leading the way and Horvath just barely behind him. It's funny, when I was entering Horvath's numbers, I believe he 5 times had negative scoring out of defense special teams, but he had so many huge games too. Like the Dallas defense, which is the team he started most of the year, they would give you like 20 or -2. And it was really weird entering all of that. And the fact that it turned out so well, but seemingly half the time he got horrible production out of the position. Just something that stuck out to me. I was third in defense and second in kicker, and I said it to Mecca last week that I thought maybe I might be first in both. It just has felt that way. It's been really good from those two spots, and you know that's luck. That's luck, man. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and when it benefits me pretend like it it's not the case. That's luck, right? You think I knew that Jake Moody and Brandon Aubrey would be a great kicking tandem, two rookies coming into the season? No. Yeah, obviously they're attached to good offenses, but there are plenty of guys who are attached to good offenses that don't work out as elite fantasy assets. Um, Brandon Aubrey last week kicked three 50-plus yard field goals. No one could ever predict that happening. That was insane. So yeah, it was a good year for me in that. Kicker was, as it normally is, pretty tight, right? Over the course of a year, it ends up being pretty even. But that's my whole problem with the position is there's no advantage that it gives you like over the course of the year, really. But week to week, there are massive ups and downs. So yeah, everyone kind of evened out to score between hell from first to 11th. There's only about a 1.5 point difference. Peter was the outlier down at the bottom this year. But from first to 11th, we're only looking at about a 1.5 point difference per game. So that's not the issue. The issue is that in any given week, somebody could have 20 going up against 2. And it's nonsense because as we see over the course of a year, it's a very even thing. But then in any given week, it could swing matchups. Defense, a little bit different. Again, defense is largely fluke, but at least you're playing like some matchups. You're going off of something. And the only thing that's really fluky with that spot is touchdown scoring. That's not predictable really at all. But yeah, you look at these two spots and it's interesting. It helped me. It clearly really hurt Nordiff. God knows what his team could have achieved if he was towards the top in these two, he would have run away with the 1 seed and with the points scored title. He would have been the clear best team. But he got weighed down a little bit by this. Most other people just kind of somewhere in the middle. Dylan, horrid defense production, 5.25 per game. It's terrible. Again, he was able and not great at kicker either. Dylan only getting about 13 points per game from these two spots and still a very good team. So he overcame it. And then bench, it is what it is. Bench doesn't mean a ton. It's a combination of depth, bad start sit decisions. Were you rostering multiple quarterbacks? If you rostered like 3 quarterbacks, of course, you're going to be higher in bench points. If you only rostered one all year, you're going to be low. But yeah, I mean, it speaks to depth a little bit, and it makes sense that Mecca was number 1. He did have a ton of depth most of the season, and Nordiff, one of the teams that we talked quite a bit about not being deep, he was 11th, and so that kind of adds up too. But yeah, most people pretty even in this, and there aren't a ton of takeaways. I enjoy doing this, and I think it paints somewhat of a picture of how the season went. But yeah, let's move along now. Let's get into these matchups. The final regular season week. There were some important results. Best matchup of the week was one between two teams that were already eliminated. How funny is that? Leading scorer of the week, Dave Horvath, 153.113, defeats Colin 142.9. And the matchup MVP here was Deebo Samuel with his 34-point showing. And Deebo, 34 more in each of the last two, 22.4 plus in 3 straight for Big Deebo. He's turned it on when Horvath didn't really need him. Sometimes that's just the way it works. But, Samuel's showing that he still has that incredible ceiling, as much of a big play threat as there is in the NFL is Debo Samuel, and one of my favorite players in the league. So I'm just happy that he's had a couple of big games in a row. And yeah, it didn't help Horvath too much, but hey, at least you could feel a little bit, better about taking him in the third or fourth round, wherever it was. And hey, Cooper Cup, welcome back to society. He's combined to go over 40 the last 2 weeks after that horrid stretch. So Cup is coming back to life a little bit. Did it against a good Baltimore defense, too. DeAndre Hopkins, wow, I didn't even know Horvath started him. He had a big game. So the three receivers that Horvath started combined for over 80 points. That's you know, that's pretty good, I'd say. That's pretty good. And David Njoku, I mean, this might have been the best game of his career. And a good amount of this production, 6 for 91 and 2 scores, came in the first half. Him and Joe Flacco had a really nice connection working. And you know what? Njoku, I'm looking at his game log now, quietly has been pretty good. Since week 7, double digits in all but one game. You'll take that for sure. I didn't know that he had been as consistent as he's been. Good low end tight end one. Rest of the team, not great. And DeAndre Swift, 3.9. DeAndre Swift has really slowed down. Single digits each of his last 3 games. Under 8 combined over the last 2. The touchdowns have dried up. I mean, they've really never been there this year. He's got 5 total touchdowns. That's been the issue with him, honestly. Jalen Hurts steals so many goal line touchdowns. And it's just Hurts Swift. Earlier on in the year, he was looking like a really good running back 1. Now it's more in that mid-tier running back 2 range. But he does have very good matchups upcoming. Seattle, the Giants, Arizona. You would hope that there could be a couple of big games in there to end the season for Swift. But yeah, for Horvath, it's a little bit of a shame. By the way, why are you rostering 2 kickers when you have Justin Tucker? What's the point of that? And made just a terrible start-sit decision going with Cameron Dicker over Tucker. Cost you 11 points. Could have had 164. Still the top scoring team of the week, but yeah, what's the point of that? Yeah, Horvath, it came at the wrong time, but you know what? It did keep him out of the consolation last place bracket bye, which he could have ended up there if things went poorly enough last week, and instead he ends up all the way up in 8th. And he gets to face off against hated foe Lohan this week. For Colin, again, you would have loved to have this come a couple weeks ago when you were in those really important matchups with Lerar and other teams when you were still fighting for a playoff spot, but that's the cruelty of fantasy football. 142.9. It's just kind of a good team effort here. Drake London, 29.2. Was that his high total of the season? Yes. So Drake London gets put into the lineup with the injury to Christian Kirk, and Colin gets nearly 30 out of him. CeeDee Lamb and Garrett Wilson combined for about 40. Jahmyr Gibbs had a good game. He scored. That'll work. You'll take that. This was a week where everyone on Colin's team scored in double digits. That's not easy to have happen. And, you get 142.9 on a week where you only got 11.5 out of your quarterback, Tua. Could have been even more. But, yeah, just a good, consistent team effort. And Colin, unfortunately, is in that bye territory of the losers bracket. And he'll be going up against the loser of Mecca and Lerar in a week's time. So yeah, Colin finishes his season 9-19, Horvath 12-16. And they'll be hoping that their teams can replicate what they did in week 14 when things matter again for them. All right, let's move along. Opposite of the matchup that we just reviewed. I was able to formulate a sentence there, even if it took me multiple seconds. This one featured the top two teams in the league. Nordiff 148.22 defeats Krieger 117.73. And Nordiff, he needed to go 2-0 to earn a bye, and he did just that. And matchup MVP, Lamar Jackson, 34.8. Lamar, it had been a while, hadn't it? It had. This was the first time since week 7 that Lamar topped 30. And between weeks 8 and 12, he scored under 17 in 4 of those 5. So, yeah, it had been a rough stretch for Lamar, but hey, said it a million times. This is what he can give you. There are going to be some tough moments. And that's why he is frustrating as hell to own. But if you have the stomach to stick with him, it's going to pay off sometimes. And it certainly did here in a very important matchup. James Cook was great. And James Cook, since that change from Ken Dorsey to Joe Brady at the offensive coordinator spot, 3 straight games for Cook, 16 plus. 2 receiving touchdowns in that time. That's been the big change. They're throwing it a ton to Cook. He's got 14 receptions over the last 3 games. And before then, he had probably had 20 receptions over the first 10, just eyeballing it. It's been a huge change and really saved what was becoming a kind of a lost fantasy season for Cook. He had become a really low-end running back too, a guy who, yeah, you're willing to start because it's not going to be horrible, but there was 0 ceiling, and that has changed in a big way under the new play calling. That's a big deal for Nordiff too, for his title hopes here. How about Ezekiel Elliott, man? This is just all due respect to Nordiff. He really lucked into one here. And hey, it happens to everybody from time to time. Sometimes you pick a guy up and it just works out, right? It's not really anything. It's just, hey, Ezekiel Elliott's out there. Why not take a flyer on him? And then what happens? Ramondre Stevenson gets injured that week. I mean, Nordiff might have picked him up on a Sunday. Let's see. I don't know. I can't. November 18th. So what was that? He actually had him before Stevenson got injured. But a couple weeks down the road, right? Stevenson goes down, and now all of a sudden you've got yourself a guy who could be huge into the fantasy playoffs. As long as Ramondre's out and Elliott's going to get this kind of volume, the guy had 29 touches this past week. It's absurd. It's absurd. He was able to pick that up in mid-November because no one wanted him. Because Elliott looked like a washed bum. He's the number 2 running back on a horrible team. He looks horrible. Nobody wanted him. Nordiff took the chance, and it's been amazing. It's been amazing to have since Stevenson went down the last game and a half, and I would imagine it continues. So yeah, anyway, kind of lucked out there. Good for you. Good for you. Sometimes you need that in this game. And this was impressive too, to put up 148 when Keenan Allen gets injured. Also, he lost his quarterback, Justin Herbert, in the first half of that game. So he had a down week from Allen, 12.8. Tyreek Hill basically missed 3/4 of Monday night's game. He only scored 10.1. And the team was still great. And it was because of Cook and Elliott and Jackson, Travis Etienne finding the end zone as well. So we'll see. I'm on record here. I'm picking Nordiff to win the league. I've kind of stayed with him most of the year on these, recaps. He had that down stretch. I think he's come out of it. Now, don't get me wrong. he needs Hill and Allen to be healthy, but it seems like they should be okay by next week. At least Hill. Hill was considered day to day. Keenan Allen, we'll see. He needs them. Can Easton Stick get the ball to Keenan Allen? Hopefully. We'll see. I mean, they don't really have anyone else to throw to, for God's sake. But yeah, I'm going with Nordiff to win the league. Krieger here. It was a bit of a disappointment considering he basically had scored 150 plus for like 2 months in a row. 117 feels like, oh my God, what a horrible week. Uh, Obviously not horrible, but for his standards. Christian McCaffrey, 16.3. That's basically his floor. He didn't get into the end zone, and he only caught one pass. Is that right? Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's pretty stunning. Christian McCaffrey gives you 145 yards rushing. You're probably thinking, holy shit, he might score like 40. Nope. He didn't do anything in the passing game, and he didn't get into the end zone. Rashad White was good again. Rashad White's just been amazing. Just a volume hog. A guy I was very wrong about. Chris Olave and Deontay Johnson also scored, so some good touchdown production. Not Chris Kittle. I don't know who Chris Kittle is. Maybe that's probably somebody's name out there, right? George Kittle. Um, he scored. He's had a good year. He really has. Tight end 4. And you know what? He's been way more consistent than recent seasons. And you look at it, since week 7, that's a stretch of 7 games. 6 of those 7 in double digits. 3 of them 20 plus. So he's had ceiling games. And he's been less of a roller coaster. It was kind of rough early on, but the back half of the season, the consistency has been there. Dak Prescott at 20.65, that feels like his floor right now. Uh, so yeah, it was just that's basically what this was for Krieger. You look up and down his team. He just didn't have those monster performances that he had been getting for a while. Also, bad defense and kicker production, less than 8 combined from those 2 spots. Pacheco was out. Hey, didn't cost you anything. You're still the 1 seed. You got to buy now. And this team's very good. He's got a great chance to win the league, obviously. And we'll see. We'll see what comes of it for him. Okay, Dylan, he needed to win to get in. He did it. 139.25 defeating Andrew. 117.76. It was a valiant effort from the A Train trying to spoil Dylan, but it just didn't quite work out. For Dylan, matchup MVP was also the weekly MVP, Evan Ingram. 11 catches, 2 touchdowns for Ingram, 32.5 points. And Evan Ingram, I said on here a couple weeks ago, where are the boom games? Where are the touchdowns? Hey, asshole, here they are. 3 over the last 2 weeks. Over 55 points combined in those 2. So Evan Ingram, who he just been, skirting along, low end tight end 1, consistent floor, bang, at the most crucial time, he's showing up. And really, it seems like he's been the biggest benefactor of that Christian Kirk injury. And so if you're Dylan, you should feel pretty good about Ingram into the fantasy playoffs. I would. I mean, Baltimore isn't the easiest matchup in the world, but he's essentially operating as their number 1 target right now. He's their go-to guy in the passing game. And those touchdowns are key. DJ Moore was great. Said it a few times on here. DJ Moore, when Justin Fields has played, was incredible. I mean, high-end wide receiver 1 when Justin Fields plays. This is 3 straight games, 22.4 or more. When Justin Fields was out for that stretch, DJ Moore sucked. So you just hope that Justin Fields stays healthy. Moore did get banged up in that game. I don't know the severity of the injury. I see he's listed as questionable, but see what comes of that. Austin Eckler somehow had a good game. 5 catches for 49 yards. He also had a touchdown, and that's what it's going to take with him. With Herbert out, that offense is probably going to be awful. But with Keenan Allen out tomorrow night, Eckler's all they have. So you can dream of like a 6 to 8 catch, 80 total yards and a touchdown type performance. It wouldn't be the greatest real life game in the world. But if he did something like that, let's say 7 catches for 80 total yards and a score, that's 21 fantasy points. That's essentially what he did this past week. And so you'll be hoping for that again. See what happens. Eckler has been really, really bad this year. I mean, he has no explosiveness. He's dropping balls. I don't know what the deal is. He might have just hit an age wall. He might not be fully recovered from his ankle injury early this season. Who knows? He has been shit, but he could volume his way uh, to decent production still. Rest of the team here wasn't great. Mahomes again, another just meh. Just it didn't kill you 16.35, but damn, it is not what you want. And now he plays New England, which has been great against fantasy quarterbacks, largely because fantasy quarterbacks don't need to throw against them. I'd be worried about another low ceiling game. The only thing is, if you want to go a little bit of narrative, Mahomes was real pissed after that loss, and they've lost 2 in a row. So maybe Mahomes comes out, firing it all over the place. The thing is, like, can he even do that? Because he just doesn't have the personnel around him to seemingly even allow for that. But that would be my only hope, that he just says, fuck everything. I'm going to go out and throw for 404. But that hasn't really been a thing for him this season, and I wouldn't be expecting it. Ken Walker the third, not much. Devontae Smith, not much. It is what it is. Probably going to need more from those guys throughout the postseason, but Ken Walker has not been good since really like early October. Week 8 onward, 1 game above 9.4 points. Some injury, some ineffectiveness. He hasn't scored a touchdown on the ground since week 6. He was a touchdown machine. Over his first 5 games, he had 6 scores. Since then, only 1. And so that's been the issue. Those dried up, and he doesn't catch enough passes to make up for it. So it's like Derrick Henry. It's like Nick Chubb. When these guys, hey, they're really good running backs, talented players, but when their offenses are struggling, when they can't get into the end zone, they're not going to be good for fantasy. And maybe Walker is due to get back in, but that Seattle offense right now, God, just frustrating. So yeah, Dylan, hey, we'll end on a positive note. He wins. He got in. He's happy about that. And he's got Peter coming up this week. Andrew, this was, again, really good performance from this team. He ends up with a second matchup win, but Dylan's team was too strong to pull off the big upset. Hunter Henry, what a pickup and start that was on Thursday night last week. 19 points, 2 touchdowns from Hunter Henry. Jaden Reed had one of the most absurd lines I've ever seen in my life. 8 catches for 27 yards. 8 catches for 27 yards. 4 rushing attempts, a season high, for 38 rushing yards and a rushing score. I don't really know what to say about that. Jaden Reed's been really good for fantasy. He scored in double digits 8 times this year. 15 or more in 4 of his last 5. And he's a guy that they go to a ton in the red zone, whether it is through the air or on the ground. He's got the 2 rushing scores and an additional 5 receiving touchdowns. So, yeah, I mean, he's been good. He's been a really good flex. And I don't know how the hell he ended up with 8 for 27. Over the last 2 weeks combined, 12 catches for 43 yards. So they only throw it to him around the line of scrimmage, I guess, which is just kind of nonsense, but it's worked for fantasy. The disappointment for Andrew Bijan Robinson, by the way, I'll just sneak that in. He had another good game, 19.8. Bijan, he's gotten going since some of the complaining from people all over the fantasy world. Last month, he's been pretty damn good. 17.6 or more, 3 of his last 4. But the letdown for Andrew and what cost him the matchup was Amon-Ra St. Brown. I was calling him like the floor king for a while. I had not coined that term until now. It's a weird thing to say. He was the floor king, and then he bottomed out here. 5.1, only 3 catches on 9 targets. That's man, that came at a bad time. And then Nico Collins, he gets injured, 2.3 points. You were thinking, oh man, this could be a big, big performance. No more Tank Dell. And instead, Nico Collins gets injured in what was a absolutely disastrous day for the Houston Texans. Collins goes down. CJ Stroud knocked out with a concussion. And they lose to the Jets and really hurt their playoff chances quite a bit. So, yeah, all in all, good week for Andrew, but hey, not enough. And that's how your season went. 6-22. Not going to get the job done. We're through 3. Let's go to Peter against Mecca. Peter, team waste basket, 129.83, defeats Mecca 81.21. For Peter, the matchup MVP, I'm going to go with Justin Fields. Just because, man, this was a well-timed big performance from him. 26.95 from Fields. And man, it's going to be one of those X factors of the fantasy playoffs in our league. I don't know what Peter's plan is with Sam Howell and Fields. This week, the Bears have Cleveland, so probably not starting Fields. But if Peter can get by this round, and frankly, I don't really expect him to. I would pick Dylan to win that matchup, but it's a relative toss-up. If Peter were to win that, Fields has those 2 great matchups, Arizona and Atlanta. And, if he could put together some big showings at the right time, he could absolutely be a league winner. And we'll see. We'll see if Peter makes it that far. We'll see if he starts him, and we'll see what Fields does. This is a very hypothetical situation, but I'm just thinking out loud here. Fields was good in this one. Who else? Yeah, Breece Hall was great. And, for Breece Hall, it's been all about pass catching for a while now. 5 receptions or more in 4 straight games. He's got 3 receiving touchdowns since week 8. He hasn't had a rushing score since week 7, since week 6. I'm going way too fast, but I'm going to continue to because I want to. Okay. Yeah, Breece Hall. He hasn't gone over 50 yards rushing since week 5. He's only topped 56 yards rushing twice all year. And yet, he's the running back 9. Pass catching has been incredible for him. And yeah, I mean, he's turned out to be a really good pick. Peter got him, 55th overall? Yeah, damn good value to get the RB9 there. Michael Pittman was Michael Pittman once again. 8 catches. That's what he does. All he does is catch 8 passes. I mean, Michael Pittman this year has 8 or more receptions in 10 out of 13 games. And I will continue every time he hits that 8 catch number or more, I will continue to point it out because it's nuts. What a great PPR asset. Pittman and Brees Hall, both of them have been. Travis Kelce, like Mahomes, another meh game. Another game you look at it and you just say, that's fine. It's fine. But it's not what I was, hoping for. Here's another guy, right? If he could show up big in the fantasy playoffs, it would take Peter's team to the next level. Again, we'll see. Time will tell. We're not that far away from finding out. Tony Pollard, this has been a big turnaround. 16.6 or more, 4 straight games. You love to see that. Pollard he's heading in the right direction at the right time. T. Higgins had 2 catches for 72 yards. He had one big reception that, kind of salvaged a respectable day. Wide receiver 61, T. Higgins. Peter able to overcome that all year. Get his team into the playoffs. So yeah, Peter 17-11. He's the 4 seed. He's definitely on paper the weakest of the playoff teams, the weakest resume as well, for sure. There's no denying that, but all you want is a seat at the table. He's got one, and so he's got a fighting chance. And especially, to me, it really is all about, can some of these sleeping giants wake up at the right time? Like, there is another gear to this team. It's not like you look at this and say, oh my God, the team is performing out of its ass. Everyone's overperforming. This is not sustainable. No, it's actually quite the opposite, where it's like, this is pretty fucking disappointing. Terry McLaurin has been awful for a month. Travis Kelce has just he's been okay for most of the season. T. Higgins has been horrid. Justin Fields is a roller coaster. There is a possibility for this team to bring it all together at the right time, and we'll see. Mecca, man, oh man, how brutal was this? One last gut punch, one last of those. This was the most insane season I can remember. Just the ups and downs of this team, the highs and lows, and one more just horribly timed disaster. Travesty. 81.21. And I got to total it up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 6th time in 14 weeks that Mecca scored under 95 points. Excuse me, under 97. 6 out of 14 weeks under 97. Yeah, he had those great weeks too. 164, 161, 130, 146, 145, 138. This team is either amazing or it's awful. And it chose to be awful at an awful time. And Mecca ends up eliminated because of it. Derrick Henry, 18.1. He had those 2 touchdowns on a night where he had just 51 total yards. He got into the end zone a couple of times. And he ended up with a great game, but it didn't matter. The matchup was already well over by Monday night. Jerick McKinnon was a good spot start with Pacheco out. 12.7 from him. He got into the end zone. Devontae Adams did once again what he's been doing way too much of, and that's 12.3. I feel like 12's kind of been his number for a while. Wow, 12.3 each of his last 2 games. He had a 12.6. He had a 12.7. So 4 out of 13 games, Adams scored 12. Plenty of times lower than that, too. That was one of the worst picks of the draft. And what can you do? I mean, that sucks. You pick a stud like that, you think it's going to go great. He ends up scoring 4 touchdowns, and Aiden O'Connell and Jimmy Garoppolo and all that, all the mess there in Vegas just really screwed that situation up. Mike Evans, decides to have his worst game of the season here. 1 catch for 8 yards on 6 targets. Evans had scored in double digits 7 straight games before this one, and he gets 1.8. Puka Nakua was pretty good, but yeah, I mean, just so much bad here. Josh Dobbs on a spot start. It's funny, Mecca actually made an incredible decision to sit the hot hand, sit CJ Stroud on the road against a great Jets defense in the rain. Mecca said, I don't want anything to do with that. And it was a genius decision, as Stroud only scored 4.55, but the spot starter, Josh Dobbs, just barely outdid him at 5.25. All you can do is kind of laugh at that. You made the right decision and it still didn't do shit for you. Yeah, I mean, that's just what can you do? Just poorly timed dip week. And so Mecca's in 7th, misses the playoffs. Again, I said it on the outset. The better teams got in, and I think even Matt would agree with that. Sam and Dylan, they were the better teams than him, and more deserving to get in. But that doesn't make it any easier. If you're Matt, you would have loved to get in, and it didn't happen. So try to avoid last place now. I don't think he'll have an issue with that. He'll probably have one 150-point week over the next 3 weeks, and he'll be fine, I would think. So still, yeah, rough way for your season to end. Let's go to a matchup that should have been great up until about 4:30 in the afternoon. It was projected to be great. After DK Metcalf, and let me, before I go on my rant here, Sam defeats me 108.67 to 97.02. We'll start on Sam's side. Matchup MVP, Saints defense special teams, 20.02. It was also the start of the week. Sam going with them over the Chargers. It won him the matchup with over 16 points added by that decision. Saints had a blocked punt returned for a score, and Carolina is just so sad. But rest of the team here, Rashee Rice was really nice. Didn't even mean to rhyme there, but I like it. I'll take it. 18.2 from Rashee, and 9+ targets, 3 games in a row. That was the issue, right? Even when he was getting some of that production in the middle of the season, it was like, well, he's not really getting any targets. He had between until week 12, he had not topped 7 targets in a game. He had topped 5 just twice. So the targets weren't there. But now the Chiefs, they finally realized, okay, look, this is our best receiver. Okay. Valdez-Scantling, bum. Kadarius Toney should be cut, frankly. Like Justin Watson he's their best guy behind Rice. That's how awful this receiving group is. So they finally realized we got to get this guy the ball. And 14.4 or more, 3 straight games for Rice. The targets are there. Feel good about him if you're Sam. Moving into the postseason, that should be a good piece. Now, you don't love this New England matchup, but if the targets are there, the floor will be there. You want another 8, 9, 10 target game. That's your hope. But yeah, he was huge in this one. Made a big difference. Kyren Williams was solid. 14.3 on a week where he didn't really catch passes. He didn't get into the end zone. He'll take that, especially against a stout defense like Baltimore. Jalen Waddle did what he does, 13.9. He's just the king of, solid wide receiver 2. And that's why he is the wide receiver 26 on the season, despite missing a game. He's just basically been a low-end wide receiver 2 points per game, 13.7. And he got 13.9 in this one. Josh Allen was good, not great. He was great in the first half, and then things really slowed down. 22.85 from him. Sam Laporta down week, but the big story here for both teams in this matchup, injuries. Mid-game injuries were devastating. Sam loses Justin Jefferson in the first half. How frustrating is that? You get him back after 2 months, only for him to not even make it through the first half. 4.7 from Jefferson. The good news is he said he's going to play. Um, Man, when a guy gets taken to the hospital, you're playing on a short week on a Saturday after a Sunday. I thought for sure he'd be out, but it sounds like he's good to go, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing for the sport. Hopefully, he is healthy, and obviously an incredible player when he is on the field. And then Josh Jacobs gets injured in the fourth quarter of his game. He had struggled all day. The Raiders, they didn't score a point. So Jacobs goes out with just 7 fantasy points. We'll see about him. He's on an extra short week playing on Thursday. That seems like a true toss up. Antonio Pierce said it's going to be a game time call. And so we'll see. It's important for Sam, I think, to have him. But if he doesn't, he has plenty of guys he could go to: Javonte Williams, Chuba Hubbard, etc. But yeah, those two mid-game injuries are just devastating, and it would have sucked if Sam was facing a better team this week. He would have been gone. Sam loses this matchup, he's gone. He would have been out of the playoffs. Mecca would have been in, but he was able to survive, and it's because my team really disappointed and had some injuries of its own. Best performance was Brandon Aubrey. I already talked about it. The man kicked 3 field goals, 50 plus, 23 points from Brandon Aubrey. Might be the best performance I've ever had from a kicker. You don't get those 20 plus very often, and I wasted it. So that's great. Guy was a quarter of my scoring, and my team still sucked dick. DK Metcalf, he had 2 for 52 and a score like 7 minutes into the game, and they never caught another pass. He ends up getting ejected late. It was late in the fourth quarter. Just nonsense. Just absolute nonsense. And what I was going to say at the beginning of this, when he caught that pass, our projection was something like 130 to 125, something around there. Because I remember thinking up until then, like, wow, this has been a great matchup. This one's panning out. This is how you would want it to go. And then seriously, from that point on, it couldn't have gone worse. There couldn't have been more nonsense to happen from that point on than there was. What else? What other garbage do you pick on? The 2 running backs I started were okay. Achane and Montgomery. Neither of them scored, but they combined for about 25 points. You'll take that. I did make a mistake, of course. I can't get it right, man. I can't get Raheem Mostert right over the last month. Whatever I do with him, it's wrong, and that's been an issue. I've been a problem. I've not made good decisions with my lineup. I've really screwed myself. Fortunately, it barely didn't cost me the matchup. If I had started Mostert over Achane, I would have lost by less than a point. So thankfully, it didn't cost me, because I would have been sick. Let's get into the really bad now. Stephon Diggs. What's happening? Third time in the last 4 games under 7 points. What is that? What's going on? I have no explanation for it. No explanation for it. Makes no sense to me. I will be eliminated very quickly, probably this week, if that happens again. The way my team is built, I just cannot have that. And so, yeah, I need Diggs. I need Diggs to bounce back. So we'll see. Maybe it'll happen. Maybe it won't. But that's been really kind of disgusting, especially with how great he had been for the majority of the season. To have this happen at the critical time, it sucks. And then Justin Herbert, kind of a fitting end, right? Justin Herbert early on, so good. So good. And then, man, the last few weeks have been so shitty. And then this was just like I said, kind of fitting way for it to end. 2.8 points. He gets injured in the first half, and he's done for the year. broke his finger, needs surgery. He is done. And you know what? The sad thing about this is I'm okay with it because I didn't want to have to start him anymore. I hated watching the Chargers. Their line is horrendous. Their play calling is horrendous. They have nothing around him. It's him and Keenan Allen. That's their entire offense with no other viable pieces around. Drops galore all over the place. Herbert missing throws. I mean, just the most disgusting team to watch when you have to care about them. And frankly, I am happy that I don't have to deal with it anymore. I really am. And yeah, you look at it. If Herbert had scored even 14 points for me, I win this matchup. I end up with a bye. Sam ends up eliminated. But instead, here we are. I mean, you want to talk about my odds of winning the league cratering. That's what happened from 4:30 onward. 4:30 Sunday. It'd be funny to actually have like analytics on this and be able to tell. I probably lost like 10 to 15% chance of winning the league. I seriously feel that way because I lost the bye. And not only would I have had a bye, in the end, I would have had the 1 seed. So I would have had the 1 seed. Sam would have been gone, which is a great team, would have been eliminated. Instead, I don't have any of that. Now I have to go in the first round as a current 13-point projected underdog against Sam. I wouldn't even be playing this week if my team didn't implode like this. And instead, I'm probably going to lose. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't good. It didn't go too great, but it is what it is. I got a chance, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, expectations are certainly low at this point, and we'll see. Yeah, Sam and I get to rematch, um, play each other for the second time in 2 weeks. We got one more matchup. Lohan defeats Laurer 110.25 to 96.05. This matchup was irrelevant. And matchup MVP, Saquon Barkley, 23.1. Saquon, 2 touchdowns. How about him? Tommy DeVito magic, kind of keeping that offense alive. And maybe Saquon will be okay down the stretch. I thought he was screwed because I thought that offense was going to be scoring like 6 points a game, but they've been decent somehow. Tommy DeVito, who was a bum at Syracuse, just the worst. Somehow he's winning NFL games. Good for him. I think that's kind of tells you what you need to know about Dino Babers. And many of you guys probably don't even know who that is, and it doesn't matter, but I'm just sharing my own thoughts. Zay Flowers, 6 for 60 and a touchdown, 20 points for Zay. Second straight game, 20 plus. He's been good with Mark Andrews out, and see if that continues. 18 targets over those 2 games is really nice too. And Lohan wins this matchup, and he puts up 110 despite horrid production from his top 2 guys. Jalen Hurts 10.85, 10.3 from Hawkinson isn't horrid, but I guess combined, I should have said. You only get about 21 points combined out of Hurts and Hawkinson. You could have seen this being a week where Lohan scored like 80, and instead he got 110. He won a matchup. He ends up 12 and 16. And yeah, Calvin Ridley was meh. I don't know how. It all went to Evan Ingram, I guess. 4 catches on 13 targets. Yeah, because I was thinking to myself, he had to have gotten targets. They were playing from behind. Kirk is out. Well, he did. He got them. He just didn't catch them, or they weren't catchable. 4 for 13. That is disgusting. But you like those targets. That does bode well for the future, at least, I guess. So yeah, solid week for Lohan here. It didn't really mean much, but you always like to win, right? Unless you're tanking, but there's nothing to tank for in this league. Lerrar, bad week, and it was a bad finish to the season for him. Jamar Chase on a day where Cincinnati scored 34 points, only 5.9 from Jamar. It was a big day for the running backs. Um, Mixon and Chase Brown. Chase Brown took, God, the Colts defense is so bad. Chase Brown took like a 55-yard screen to the house. Once he got past the first level, there was nobody. There was just nobody back there. He had to make one guy miss, and he did. He made him look awful. The Colts are somehow a 7-6 team. The Colts and Steelers, two teams that are not very good, face off on Saturday, and the winner is going to be in great shape to make the playoffs. As funny as that is. Da, 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 da. Yeah, Joe Mixon, I just said it. It was a big day for those running backs. 21 and a half from him, 13 and a half from Kamara. How about Kyle Pitts with a spot start, 14.7? He had a nice touchdown reception that I saw. It was Pitt's first time scoring in double digits since week 6. He's had an awful season, but what can you do? He came through when you started him this week, so there's that. Wide receiver 2 continues to be a black hole for Lerrar, 3.6 from Jerry Jeudy. Jared Goff, too, 8.05. Jared Goff is a guy you start him when he's at home, and you just don't start him on the road. I don't know the exact splits, but it hasn't been pretty on the road outside of a couple of showings. 2 of his, what do we have? 7 games on the road, he scored over 20. Yeah, you don't want to deal with that. But quarterback has been an issue for Lerrar. We knew this. It was a bad week, and it was a rough kind of end to the season. Lerrar, a month or so ago, it looked like, damn, he's going to be able to get into the playoffs, and then things kind of fell apart. That Jonathan Taylor injury was brutal. Deshaun Watson going down didn't help. Dalton Schultz, he was a big part of Lerrar's turnaround. Him missing the last few weeks, quietly, huge loss. And then just never being able to find that wide receiver too. Um, Altogether just spoiled the season. So yeah, I mean, it's uh it's too bad. It would have been kind of funny for Lerrar to sneak in with the way he built his team, and hey, props to him because Kamara was just a home run of a pick, one of the best picks of the draft. Taylor, when he was healthy, was damn good. Like it worked out. Give him credit. It worked out what Lerrar did. It just the rest of the team was disappointing for too much of the season. All right, we'll do power rankings. We'll do a quick playoff preview, and then I'm out of here. Power rankings 1 through 5 stay the same. Krieger, Nordiff, me, 1 through 3. The 3, 19, and 9 teams. We all finished with the same record. 4 and 5, I'm sticking Sam 4, Dylan 5, and then Peter 6. He moves up a spot. Horvath jumps up big time. The algorithm loved what Horvath did. He goes from 11 to 7. I mean, that back half is so bunched up. Mecca goes from 6 to 8. Lohan stays 9. Colin stays 10. Lerrar's he's the big dropper this week from 8 to 11, and Andrew he's in a class of his own at 12. No one's catching him. Quick records if everyone played everyone each week. Recap. Nordiff edges out Krieger by a game. Nordiff 104 and 50 this season. That is damn impressive. Krieger 2, I was 3. Dylan 4, Sam 5, Peter 6. Those were the 6 playoff teams, and they all did well in that very important metric. Like, that metric's no joke. That is very predictive. Horvath 7. Actually, Horvath, Mecca, and Lerrar all went 69 and 85. Again, to just kind of show you how bunched up it is. Colin 66 and 88. Lohan 64 and 90. And then Andrew 15 games worse than anybody at 49 and 105. Basically the inverse of Nordiff. So yeah, that's going to do it. Well, no, it's not. I got to do the playoff preview. So I'm going up against Sam. Uh, were each of us in the playoffs last year? I believe so. I believe so. Give me a second. I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared. Was Sam in? Yeah, he was. So two teams that were in last year, they're in again. Sam defeated me in the 2021 semifinal. Last time we faced off in the playoffs, Sam went on to win the league that year. And so, see how it goes. I don't know. I don't know what to expect. I don't expect great. My team hasn't been that great for a bit here, and seems like Sam's going to have his guys, at least Jefferson, and we'll see about Jacobs. And then Peter against Dylan. That's a matchup of two teams that didn't make it a year ago. So two teams that are back in the postseason. I don't know if they've ever faced off in the playoffs. I'm sorry I wasn't taking the time to look back on those records. Would have been neat to do that, but I suck. So yeah, if I had to pick, I think Sam and Dylan win and move on to the next round. But it doesn't typically go the way you would expect. So who the hell knows what's going to happen? And then as far as the last place bracket goes, um, we got Mecca against Larar, and then we've got Horvath against Lohan. Horvath Lohan, there's going to be some animosity there. Looking forward to that one. The loser of Mecca Larar will face Colin in a week. The loser of Horvath Lohan will have the right to face Andrew. And so that's where we stand. Regular season is done. 3 more weeks to go. And should be exhilarating. Just so amazing. Shouldn't it be? Should be the greatest thing to ever happen to the universe these next 3 weeks of fantasy football. So I'm going to go now and I'm going to enjoy the rest of Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. All 46 minutes that are left of it. And then we'll see what happens in the future for all of us, too. But until next week, goodbye.